The wind howls like a banshee across the Devil's Belt, a treacherous stretch of water separating the coast of Connecticut from British-occupied Long Island. It is the dead of night, November 1778. The waves of the Long Island Sound, black and cold as oblivion, crash over the gunwales of the small whaleboat. The man at the tiller, Caleb Brewster, is a mariner born of this water, yet even he feels the icy grip of fear. His knuckles are white where he grips the wood, his face lashed by salt spray and a sleet that feels like tiny shards of glass. He is alone, a ghost on a furious sea, but he is not the hunter. He is the hunted. Every shadow on the water could be a Royal Navy patrol boat. The HMS Halifax, a formidable British sloop, is known to stalk these waters, its crews eager for the bounty on rebel couriers. Brewster is acutely aware that the package tucked inside his oilskin coat is more valuable than any cargo of gold. It is a simple letter, perhaps two. To an untrained eye, one might appear to be a mundane business transaction. The other, a note between lovers filled with empty platitudes. But hidden within the fibers of that paper, written in a fluid that is invisible to the naked eye, lies the raw material of revolution, intelligence. The words in that letter, if they reach their destination, can move armies, save lives, and perhaps turn the very tide of the war. If they are intercepted, Caleb Brewster will hang from a yardarm by dawn, and the fragile new network of spies, America's first, will be strangled in its infancy. For now, all he can do is wrestle with the storm, his eyes straining for the faint, distant light of the Connecticut shore, a pinprick of hope in an overwhelming darkness. The fate of his mission, and the men who risked their lives to give him this message, rests on his skill, his courage, and his luck. To understand the desperation that drove a man like Caleb Brewster into the heart of a winter storm, one must understand the blindness that had crippled the Continental Army 2 years earlier, in the catastrophic autumn of 1776. General George Washington had learned the brutal cost of inadequate intelligence. His army was shattered, rooted from Long Island, and driven from the bastion of New York City. The city, with its magnificent deep-water port and strategic command of the Hudson River, was now the nerve center of British power in North America. From within its garrisoned walls, General Sir Henry Clinton and his vast military machine directed the war, confident and secure. Washington, meanwhile, was in the wilderness, his army a phantom force, bleeding away from desertion, disease, and despair. He had tried to penetrate the veil. He had sent a brave, idealistic young captain from Connecticut, a schoolteacher named Nathan Hale, to spy on the British in New York. It was a mission born of amateurism and hope. Hale, disguised but with no training, no contacts, and no system of support, was captured within a week. The British, needing to make an example, hanged him without trial. His purported last words, "I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country," became a rallying cry for the patriots. But for Washington, the lesson was colder and harder. Patriotism was not enough. Courage was not enough. Victory required information. It required a professional, clandestine, secret service, one that could operate under the very noses of the British. A network built not on heroic gambles, but on meticulous planning, discipline, and absolute secrecy. In the bleak winter camps that followed, first at Valley Forge and then at Morristown, as his soldiers shivered and starved, Washington became obsessed. He was no longer just a general. He was evolving into America's first spymaster. His letters from this period burn with an urgent need for good intelligence. He wrote to his officers, "The necessity of procuring good intelligence is apparent and need not be further urged. Upon the knowledge of these things, the success of our measures must in a great degree depend." He knew that the British Army in New York was a black box. He had no idea of its strength, its movements, its intentions. Was General Clinton planning a new offensive? Was he preparing to march on the Patriot capital of Philadelphia? Was the Royal Navy assembling a fleet to attack the French, America's new and vital allies? Without answers, Washington could only react, and to react in war is to lose. The challenge was immense. New York City was an island fortress, a counterintelligence state in miniature. British Provost Marshal William Cunningham ran a brutal police force, and loyalist spies were everywhere, their eyes and ears tuned for the slightest hint of rebel sympathy. Letters were routinely opened. Travel was restricted. Suspicious individuals were imprisoned in hellish sugar houses or prison ships, where they often disappeared forever. To build a spy ring inside this hornet's nest seemed impossible. Any communication would have to be invisible, any courier a ghost, any agent a master of deception. Washington entrusted the daunting task of building this network to a brilliant young cavalry officer, Major Benjamin Tallmadge. Tallmadge was a Yale graduate, a man of intellect and action, but he carried a heavy personal burden. Nathan Hale had been his classmate, his friend. Hale's capture and execution haunted Tallmadge, fueling a cold resolve to create an organization that would never again sacrifice an agent through carelessness. He was determined to build a chain, a system so robust that if one link were broken, the others would hold. The first innovation was to revolutionize the very language of spying. Tallmadge, drawing on his classical education, understood the ancient art of cryptography. He created what became known as the Tallmadge Code. It was not a simple substitution cipher, but a sophisticated codebook. He and Washington assigned numbers to 763 common words, names, and places. George Washington became 711. New York was 727. Gun was 192. An entire message could be translated into a meaningless string of digits, indecipherable to any British officer who might intercept it. To further confound the enemy, Tallmadge created a list of aliases for his agents. He would be John Bolton. Washington was referred to only by his number, and the spy ring itself was given a name, borrowed from Culpeper County, Virginia, where Washington had worked as a surveyor in his youth. They would be the Culper ring, but a code, no matter how clever, was only one layer of defense. A coded message still looked like a secret message. Tallmadge needed a way to make the secrets themselves disappear. The solution came from an unlikely source. Sir James Jay, a London-based physician and the brother of American diplomat John Jay. Sir James had developed a remarkable chemical compound, a sympathetic stain. It was, in essence, invisible ink. A message written with his formula, likely a solution of ferrous sulfate, would vanish completely upon drying. It would only reappear when a second chemical, the developer a reagent like sodium carbonate, was brushed upon the paper, or when the paper was carefully heated. This was a quantum leap in espionage technology. Now, a spy could hide his true message in the blank spaces of an otherwise ordinary letter. A note discussing crop prices or family health could be passed through British checkpoints without raising the slightest suspicion, while between its lines lay the details of troop movements or naval deployments. The combination of the Tallmadge Code and Jay's invisible ink created a formidable two-layered security system. The enemy would first have to realize that a secret message even existed on the blank page, and then, if they managed to develop it, they would still be confronted with a meaningless jumble of numbers. With the tools of tradecraft established, Tallmadge now needed the most crucial component, the agents. He turned to the place he knew best, the place he was born and raised, the small town of Setauket, on the north shore of Long Island. He knew the people there, their loyalties, their hatred of the British occupation that had turned their quiet community into a garrison. His first recruit was a childhood friend, a farmer named Abraham Woodhull. Woodhull was a reluctant spy. He was a man of the earth, cautious and fearful. The war had brought British dragoons to his doorstep, and he had seen the casual brutality of the occupation firsthand. When Tallmadge approached him, Woodhull was terrified. To be caught meant the hangman's noose and the confiscation of his family's farm. But Tallmadge was persuasive, appealing to Woodhull's patriotism and his quiet resentment of the crown. He convinced him that serving the cause in secret was as vital as carrying a musket in the field. Woodhull agreed, taking the alias Samuel Culper. He would become the anchor of the ring, the vital link on Long Island. But Woodhull faced an immediate problem. As a simple farmer, he had no legitimate reason to travel frequently to New York City, 55 miles away, to gather intelligence. His repeated trips would inevitably attract attention. He made a few daring forays, posing as a traitor. But the risk was immense. On one occasion, he was arrested and imprisoned, saved only by the intervention of a powerful loyalist relative. The experience rattled him. Woodhull realized he could not be the man on the inside. His role had to be that of a manager, a handler on Long Island. The ring needed another link, someone who could move through British-occupied Manhattan without suspicion, someone who belonged there. They needed a source deep inside the enemy's lair. This is when Abraham Woodhull, now Culper Sr., made the most important recruitment of the war. He knew of a young man, a Quaker merchant from a prominent Long Island family, who had recently set up a dry goods business in the city. The young man's name was Robert Townsend. On the surface, Townsend was the least likely of spies. He was quiet, unassuming, and in his late 20s, still unmarried. As a Quaker, he was ostensibly a pacifist, neutral in the great conflict tearing the colonies apart. This neutrality was his greatest asset. While zealous patriots had fled the city and vocal loyalists were closely watched, Townsend was seen as harmless, a simple businessman interested only in commerce. He wrote occasional society columns for a loyalist newspaper, Rivington's Royal Gazette, a position that gave him a perfect excuse to linger in the city's coffeehouses and inns. And it was in those establishments, the King's Head Tavern, the merchant's coffee house, that the real business of the British war effort was conducted. Over glasses of Madeira and mugs of ale, British officers and loyalist officials gossiped, boasted, and inadvertently revealed military secrets. They spoke freely in front of the quiet young shopkeeper, the one they called Culper Junior. Recruiting Townsend was an act of supreme delicacy. Woodhull could not simply approach him. A misstep could get them both killed. He used an intermediary, a tavern keeper named Austin Rowe, who already served as a courier for the fledgling ring. Townsend initially refused. The risk was unimaginable. His father, Samuel Townsend, was a respected patriot figure on Long Island, and discovery would not only mean Robert's death, but the ruin of his entire family. But something changed his mind. Perhaps it was witnessing the arrogance and cruelty of the British occupation up close. Perhaps it was a deeper, hidden well of patriotism. Or perhaps it was the quiet conviction that he uniquely was in a position to alter the course of history. In the summer of 1779, Robert Townsend agreed. He became Samuel Culper Junior, the invisible eye of George Washington at the very heart of the British war machine. With Townsend in place, the Culper ring was finally complete, an intricate human mechanism designed to smuggle secrets across 55 miles of enemy territory. The process was a masterpiece of clandestine logistics. It began with Townsend in his Manhattan shop. He would listen, observe, and collect intelligence on everything from troop readiness and naval preparations to the quality of the British soldiers' food and forage. He cultivated sources, including, it is believed, high-ranking British officers who were either disgruntled or sympathetic to the American cause. Once he had gathered enough information, Townsend would retreat to a private room. There, he would compose his report, a meticulously detailed letter addressed to a loyalist merchant on Long Island to cover. On a separate sheet, or between the lines of the cover letter, he would write his true message using Jay's invisible ink, often first encoding it with Tallmadge's numerical cipher. The finished dispatch was a ticking bomb of information. Harmless on the outside, devastating within. The next link in the chain was Austin Rowe, the tavern keeper from Setauket. Rowe made regular trips into the city, ostensibly to buy supplies for his establishment. This gave him the perfect cover to visit Townsend's shop. He would pick up the dispatch and begin the perilous 55-mile ride back to Setauket. It was a journey through a landscape swarming with British patrols and loyalist militias, every mile fraught with danger. Rowe would hide the letters in his saddlebags or sewn into his clothing, praying he wouldn't be stopped and searched. His destination was a prearranged dead drop, a small wooden box hidden in a pasture on Abraham Woodhull's farm. Rowe would leave the message in the box without ever making direct contact with Woodhull, minimizing the risk of them being seen together. After Rowe was gone, Woodhull Culper Senior would retrieve the dispatch. His task was to get the intelligence across the Long Island Sound to Major Tallmadge in Connecticut. For this, the ring relied on the bravest link in their chain, the whaleboatman, Caleb Brewster. But how to signal Brewster, who would be waiting and watching from his boat on the Sound, that a message was ready? Directing him to shore at the wrong time could lead to his capture. For this, the ring devised a beautifully simple and intimate system. They enlisted a neighbor of Abraham Woodhull, a woman named Anna Strong. On her property, which overlooked the Sound, was a clothesline. The signal was her laundry. Anna would hang a black petticoat on the line, a signal visible to Brewster from miles away. The black petticoat meant a message was ready for pickup. By counting the number of white handkerchiefs she hung alongside it, Brewster would know which of several secret coves to land his boat in that night. It was a domestic chore transformed into a vital act of espionage, a silent, fluttering conversation that no British patrol would ever notice. Alerted by the signal, Brewster would make his move. Under the cover of darkness, he would row his small boat across the treacherous, heavily patrolled Sound. Reaching the designated cove, he would meet Woodhull, take the dispatch, and begin the dangerous journey back to Connecticut. Once there, he would hand the precious intelligence to Benjamin Tallmadge. Tallmadge would apply the developing chemical to the paper, watch as the secret writing bloomed to life, decode the numbers, and then, with his own analysis appended, send the final intelligence by express rider to the headquarters of General Washington. From a coffeehouse conversation in Manhattan to the commander-in-chief's desk, the journey was complete. The system was ingenious, redundant, and built on the quiet courage of ordinary people who had become extraordinary spies. And now, with Culper Junior in place, it was finally ready to go to work. The question was, would it be enough to change the course of the war?